Hi everyone, I'm Felicia. Welcome to my channel. Today's January 4th. It is a Sunday and I hope you're all having a wonderful Sunday. The weekend is almost over and I thought for this little video today I would share with you some information that I recently learned about myself. I had something called a carrier screening done. It's a genetic test to see if there are any hereditary conditions that I may have. Considering our son that I'm currently pregnant with has trisomy 21, he also has a heart defect, which is something that goes along with having Down syndrome. My first baby also had a heart defect, a very rare type of heart defect. And she does have autism, which isn't necessarily hereditary either. But in any case, we were encouraged by my doctor to do this test, both my husband and I, which we did, and I have the results. And it turns out I am positive for one thing. My husband is also positive for one thing, and that one thing happens to be the same thing, which is just our wonderful luck. Granted, it isn't anything that contributed to our children's disabilities. It is just something worth noting, and I'm really glad that we did the test and that we now know this, because it can be something that is important to know, especially in my case right now. So that thing is called Factor V Leiden. I've also heard it pronounced Leiden. In any case, Factor V Leiden is a blood clotting disorder, and it affects about, I think, 5% of people who have European ancestry. And my husband is entirely made up of European ancestry, and I am about 3/4 European ancestry. That other quarter is Native American, if you're curious to know. I am part of a tribe here in Oregon, and so I'm pretty sure it came from my mother's side. And in my husband's case, we don't know for sure, but I think it came from his mother as well, because she has a sister who unfortunately died from a blood clot, and my mother actually suffered a blood clot just in the past year. And so, given the evidence there, we believe it came from our mothers. And the way it works is that it is passed down genetically from a parent, and usually it's just one. We both have something called heterozygous or heterozygotic form of it, so we just have one copy of that gene, which means it came from one parent. Now, considering he and I both have this condition, there is a, I believe, 25% chance that our children will be homozygous, which means they'll get two copies, one from me, one from him. And in that case, it can be something that is a little bit more problematic, but as far as we know, our children don't, well, we don't know about this baby yet, and we don't actually know about my daughter. I do want to do genetic testing for her, but she has had a surgery before, and that was successful. She has not had a blood clot. Usually how it works, I guess, is you would possibly develop a blood clot later in life. Surgery is a trigger, as well as pregnancy, and so I am currently taking a low-dose aspirin to make sure I don't get a blood clot, because even just being pregnant puts you at an increased risk. And I will be having a C-section with this baby, and given that, I may need to take like a Levinox, like a injectable type of blood thinner for a period of time after my surgery, just to make sure I don't get a blood clot. And I'm taking precautions. I've ordered some like compression stockings. You know, we will be traveling soon on a lengthy road trip, and so I made sure to schedule it so that we have lots of stops every few hours where I can get out of the car and stretch my legs. It's important to avoid immobility, and obviously not to smoke, which it's a problem for me, but eating a healthy diet. You don't want to be obese. Basically all of those normal blood clot risk factors are something you have to be a little bit extra precautious about, because there's about an 8 times increase than the normal average person to develop a blood clot. And those risks go up with those added risk factors like pregnancy. I also won't be able to take estrogen because that increases the risk. Luckily, when I was younger, it just so happened I never took an estrogen-based birth control, which is just a good turn of events because that could have contributed to a blood clot unknowingly. And then when my daughter was born, I didn't know. At the time, I had Factor V Leiden, and I had a C-section with her as well. But I was sort of forced to be very active after she was born because she was in the NICU, and we stayed at her side the entire time. And so immediately following my C-section, I was always like walking up and down the hallways. The nearest bathroom was very far away, and so I always had to have a bit of a trek, very often throughout the day, to go get food and whatever we needed to do. I was doing a lot more walking than I would have liked to have been doing right after a C-section, but it was a good thing for me, it turns out. So Factor V is just an increased risk for developing a blood clot. Now, considering my husband has it as well, there's a 50% chance our children will be a heterozygous, meaning they get one copy of that gene, which is a pretty high chance. So we need to make sure that we're, if they need surgeries or anything like that, that we, let the doctors know, and that we could get them tested as well, just so for peace of mind, I guess. And there's a 25% chance that they'll have the 2 copies, and that increases the chance of a blood clot by like 80 times. So that is a little bit more concerning, I guess. But it doesn't contribute to any of the, I guess you could say, problems they've had. There's no evidence that it leads to congenital heart defects or any other, condition. It's just a fun evolutionary thing that happened, 20,000 years ago in Europe. Somebody, got this gene, and then 5% of Europeans end up having this gene. So I guess I'm a genetic mutant. But it's good to know. I'm glad I know, so that I can be as healthy as possible in the future and avoid getting a blood clot. So I was also a carrier for 4 other conditions, which does not mean I have those conditions myself. It's just sort of in my genetic code. And if my husband also had those conditions, if he was a carrier for those conditions, then there would be a 25% chance our children would develop that condition. They'd be positive for it themselves. However, there were no other conditions that my husband and I were both carriers for. So the things that I was a carrier for include alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. I guess this increases the risk for emphysema. I'm a carrier for biotin deficiency. I believe that is like a biotin deficiency, like the vitamin biotin. I'm a carrier for non-syndromic hearing loss, so deafness. And I'm a carrier for steroid-resistant nephrotic syndrome. And then my husband was a carrier for something, I forget what it's called, but it's an iron overload. So anyway, it's nice to know, that I have an increased risk for getting a blood clot, and so does my husband, and so will probably our children. There's only a 25% chance that neither of our kids are gonna get it. So, odds are we're all gonna have a high risk for blood clots, which is important to know for traveling, for lifestyle, and everything. So I'm glad that we did the test, and I'm glad that it wasn't anything more serious. I know it's a little scary sometimes, I think, for people to undergo these tests. Like, they think, oh, well, it's going to cause me so much anxiety if I know, but truly I think it's important to know about your health and to try to be as healthy as possible. So I encourage all of you to undergo testing for yourself if it's possible. We're fortunate enough that our insurance has covered most of it. I'm rambling now. I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend, and I will be back tomorrow. I'm trying to keep up my streak here. I don't want to give up on my New Year's resolution to make YouTube videos just yet. Even if I get busy, I'm going to try to make a quick video. So, alright, I'll talk to you later. Bye!